Hey guys, welcome back to the Rhythms and Roots podcast. I am here with a good friend of mine today, but before I begin that, I want to just talk real briefly that there's something strange about endurance sports in general, or just the word endurance, because nobody actually just goes out and runs a 5K or even a 10K. Nobody goes out and starts doing 235 pounds on a bench press. Nobody gets on a treadmill and runs for 2 hours just out of the middle of nowhere. Nobody just wakes up and one day just says, you know what sounds really, really enjoyable would be to go run 30 miles out in the mountains with a bunch of wildlife all by myself and see if I can figure it out. Nobody says, hey, I should just go suffer for an hour or 7 hours or whatever it is. But yet people want to do these things. People show up to do these things and they are interested in these things. Early mornings, long miles, recovery days, whatever it is. Maybe it's the discipline that it takes or the injuries or nutrition. I know for me, I get into those injuries and I go, gosh, am I supposed to do this or am I supposed to pull back? What am I supposed to do in this moment when my hips are hurting or my knee is hurting? Maybe it's the nutrition piece and you're struggling with that, or fatigue or silence, training blocks. And then you feel like you got to start over when you have to take some time off from injury. Why do we keep doing this? Why do we do this to ourselves? I just watched the Cocodona 250, and one of the last guys that finished, his name is Wayne. And I'm telling you, I was watching the video of him coming across the line, maybe the last mile that they were videoing him, and he was almost falling over and people were trying to help him. And part of me just goes, why are we doing this? In fact, he was gray in color. I remember some people replying about it and saying, I'm an EMT and I would not have let him do that. So there was a lot of questions in my mind about, why do I run? Why do I train? Why do I actually test my body to these levels? Because somewhere along the way, I think many of us realize that training is doing something to us on the inside more than it is just doing what it's doing on the outside. It's forming us, it's transforming us, miles expose us, the rhythms shape us, and something is happening spiritually too, whether you want that to happen or not. Or maybe that's not even your goal and you find out that emotionally you're starting to change. Becoming whole, body, mind, and soul is kind of the direction that I want to take for this season. And today's conversation may be one of the clearest examples of this entire idea. Today, I'm joined by endurance coach, runner, founder of Fly Life Fitness. His name is Josh Fly, and we talk today about training, identity, recovery, suffering, discipline. Wherever we're going to go, we're going to let the Holy Spirit kind of lead us today. But Josh, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Rhythms and Roots podcast. We had a little bit of issue and some technical stuff getting this going, but we are here and we're making it happen, and I can't wait for this. So as we begin, I told you before we hit record, what draws us to these concepts that I was just talking about? Like, why do we go through all that suffering? What draws us to endurance? What draws us to almost what people call the pain cave? And that pain cave isn't just running. It is in all kinds of sports. It is in lacrosse. You're a lacrosse coach are you in New York, upstate New York still?
I'm currently in a town called Ridgeway, Colorado. It's just outside of Telluride. So this
Oh,
was
you
my,
are in
yeah,
Colorado.
that's right.
That's
So, but I
awesome.
was coaching, this was my fifth season at Telluride High School
Wow.
as the performance coach for the high school boys lacrosse team. I've also worked a little bit with the girls team as well, but imparting skills around breath work and in-season strength and conditioning, that type of thing. Skills and tools that hopefully they can use both on and off the field. So it's been a really, really special time to invest in the young athletes there.
Man, that's awesome. See, this tells me how long it's been since we've actually connected here. I'm thinking you're still in like New York, but tell us a little bit about yourself, what Fly Life actually is, and what your thoughts are and dreams and visions behind all this.
Sure. Well, first to answer that earlier question you just asked about, like, why do people do hard things, I guess, is kind of the question, take on endurance events and whatnot. I do think there's something deep down in our spirits that's just needing to kind of get out there and explore the edges of ourselves. You know,
Hmm.
those of us that have been blessed with the capacity or capability, gives us kind of a doorway into just experiencing the fullness of how we were created. And
Yeah.
so we can get more into that, but you know, a lot of different reasons, but it's pretty powerful when people take on their first, you know, 10K or half marathon or ultra marathon, and to see and witness what happens for somebody throughout a training season is pretty phenomenal. It's fun to get a front row seat sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of, yeah.
What's interesting is my dad just had open heart surgery a week ago, and I was sitting down with him, and
Wow.
he just looked at me and he said, "Now I know why you do all this running stuff." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I never thought that I could get through this. It's really, really hard." And he said, "I'm just realizing what I'm capable of physically." He said, "I've always
Wow.
known what I'm capable of spiritually, but this I would have never guessed I'd ever survive, you know?" And I think sometimes the flip is true as well. We do things like run a 10K, think we'd never be able to do it, but is that training us for something later in life that God is saying, "You've suffered well in the past. I can get you through this too." So just
Yeah.
a thought. As you were kind of sharing that. So tell us about, where you are now, maybe a little bit of your history, and then Fly Life, what your dreams are for that.
Sure. Yeah. I've been in sort of the health and fitness wellness industry for the most part, my entire career, over 2 decades. I'm in
Hmm.
like year 22 of coaching and
That is crazy.
training. Yeah, time flies. It really does. So I really found, like, maybe halfway through college, I went to college at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado. You know, grew up playing sports and spending a lot of time in the woods and hiking and snowboarding. My primary sports were baseball and football. My dad was just like in love with the game of golf. And so I've also played quite a bit of golf in my life. But halfway through college, I sort of started to realize I was just fascinated by human performance, physiology, and wanted to shift majors out of business to exercise science. But there, you know, time and money, I stayed the course and stayed with business, graduated with a business degree, but shortly thereafter started to pursue coaching through personal training and some of these things, and have kind of stuck with it all these years. So I had the great privilege for about 14 years of my life to work in New York City at a place called Chelsea Piers Fitness.
Okay.
Just this remarkable facility, sits right on the Hudson River, and kind of has everything you could imagine: an indoor track, indoor sand volleyball court, indoor rock wall, and then, of course, all the different training. And it was there that I really kind of forged a passion for not only coaching and fitness, but also endurance training and coaching. And fast forward, I started doing some fundraising for a really incredible organization called World Vision. It's where you and I met, of course.
Yeah.
And World Vision is, for those that don't know, World Vision is the largest Christian humanitarian organization in the world, and also the largest non-governmental supplier of clean water.
Hmm.
And it was through my work at World Vision where I got to sort of like integrate these two passions of mine in my faith, my pursuit of faith and fitness. And so I kind of got to collaborate these two things together and started leading teams to run races and hike mountains, and all on behalf of kids and communities around the world. And so what year was it that we met for the Black Hills
22.
Ultra?
I think it was
That sounds about right.
2022. Yeah. Just to kind of add on to that, I had run a marathon before. I'd run a half marathon. I'd never done anything on a trail. I was starting to run with a group of people at a run club here, and everybody was doing these trail ultras, and I mean, I knew about them a little bit, but not a lot. In the past, I had run for a missions event where I raised money to send missionaries overseas, and that was kind of cool. And in that moment, I was a part of a thing called Run for Missions, which was run 100 miles, and this guy was running 100 miles to raise money for missions. And so I was kind of like, didn't even know I was a pacer then, but I was a pacer. I didn't know anything about this. And
Yeah.
when I did that, I ran 37 miles with him. And then the day before that, I had run a half marathon. So I ran like almost 50 miles in 2 days. And I thought, I could do this. This is kind of fun.
That's right.
Um, so then I don't even know how I got connected with the World Vision piece. I think it was just through the Colfax Marathon and things like that. And they said, you should run the Black Hills. We have this like special event where you can run an ultra and raise money and get kids signed up through World Vision for clean water in Africa and all over the world. But man, I remember grabbing this plan that you had sent me, and I wasn't sure I should even do this. And you sent me this training plan, and it's so extensive. It was really wonderful. And I was like, I don't know who this Josh guy is. I don't know if he really knows what he's doing. And I got all these friends that run ultras, and I gave it to one of my friends, Nick, and Nick looked at it and he goes, dude, where'd you get this? And I said, yeah, is it bad? He goes, no, this is like legit. He's like, this is so cool. And I said, why do you say that? He goes, nobody ever does like the training plan plus this spiritual side, breath work, breathing practices. He's like, I've never seen this. This is so cool. And a couple of the guys in my group have adapted and used it. My son just finished his first half marathon, he's training for one. And so he's beginning to run and he loves this training plan. And so I don't know, like it
It's cool.
changed the way that I saw running from just finishing something and actually adapting it to an everyday life and a lifestyle that changes our spiritual side too, not just our physical side. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted you on here. So yeah, so tell me go a little further into that because I kind of interrupted you there, but I wanted to tag on to like our connection there. But yeah, where did it go from there?
Yeah, so I mean, there was an overlap. I was fundraising for World Vision while also working full time at Chelsea Piers. I was the fitness director there for several years and was able to kind of bridge the gap between these two worlds of like my, working in for-profit business and training and coaching, but also merging this passion project of fundraising through endurance running, and I was able to use the platform that I had at Chelsea Piers to really like bring people into the fold and bring some awareness to what World Vision was doing. So got to really collaborate and do some fun projects there. But about a year ago, I left World Vision. It was just, I don't know if the stars aligned, but I really felt God working on my spirit with what opportunities were in front of me and kind of this moment in time. And so I decided to endeavor the course of starting my own business. I've had a lot of creative inspiration over the years and was curious about what it might be to be an entrepreneur. I certainly have a lot of respect for the people that have taken that path of building small business and things like this. But I took the leap of faith. I really officially launched my business, which is Fly Life Performance and Wellness Coaching. It's
Hmm.
kind of a multifaceted platform, but I officially launched it just after Thanksgiving this past year. So
Wow.
let's call it December 1st of 2025. So I'm still like very new to this idea of having my own business, but it's been great. I'm kind of focused on three primary things. Love the one-on-one coaching aspect of life. I just love like these one-on-one conversations and getting to meet people in, their hopes and dreams and health scares and like the things that come up as we live. It could be losing weight, getting in shape for a big event, wanting to just kind of reorient your trajectory through fitness. I think fitness is actually an amazing doorway into a possibility of deeper connection to self, to God. So
Hmm.
there's the personal training aspect that I do mostly virtual. And then the primary focus, kind of my middle offering, is that I'm doing a lot of team and corporate wellness.
Yeah,
And
I
so that
saw
could
that.
look like a 1 day or multi-day workshop It could be corporate groups, it could be sports teams, really love the high school age. Like I mentioned earlier, to impart some of the wisdom for these younger kids to be able to like take these tools forward. But yeah, the corporate team building and corporate coaching. And then I haven't launched yet, but I am ultimately going to try to lead out one domestic trip and one international trip a year. And I'm calling that kind of like fitness adventure travel.
Wow, that's
So
cool. Yeah.
you could dream up a bucket list place that you want to travel, pair that with something cool like doing an ultra marathon or a big hike, or something that's just gonna give us something to train for, anchor together in community, and then go do the thing and have some remarkable kind of transformational experiences together. So that's kind of what Fly Life is about for now, at least in this first iteration.
Love that because I think that I'm starting to see this a little bit. You know, I love the idea of saying, I'm going to take my vacation and go somewhere,
Yeah.
but I'm going to come back transformed in a little way. I know vacations are supposed to reset you, but I don't know that vacations always like completely fill you or change you, if that makes any sense. And
No,
so
absolutely.
taking a vacation and doing something that you love, whether it's, a hike or, going to Spain and doing something there, anything like that, but coming back saying, I had a beautiful moment on top of this mountain where I just felt like maybe God totally connected with me. And I saw the scenery, I saw the physical strain of my body and different things like that. And everything came to alignment in a moment on top of this mountain. I remember doing that with junior high boys. We would go, there's a place called Noah's Ark. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. They do like rafting trips and backpacking trips. And I used to take junior high
Buena
boys.
Vista.
Yeah.
Or the locals call it Buena
Buna.
Vista.
Yeah, don't call
Buni.
it Buena when you're down there. But yeah, these boys would put on 40-pound rucksacks, these backpacks. And most of these boys are like 75 pounds and they were crying on the trails a little bit here and there. And we were doing 4-night, 5-day backpacking trips where they're going 30, 35 miles and it stretched them. But I'll remember this one
Formative.
man, and I remember this one point kind of going across this ridge line, and our guide looked at us and said, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a solo hike. Everybody's just going to go by themselves. And I saw this ridge line, and it's down in the Collegiate Peaks area. And I thought, I'm going to get fired if one of these kids falls off the edge of this,
Yeah, probably so.
and probably should have. Yeah. But I get to the other end, and it was like, junior high boy after boy just started showing up with tears streaming down their face. And I was like, I am getting fired. They hated this. And when they got there, they said, I felt something different in that moment, and like, I don't know, when we do hard things like that and we get on top of mountaintops and we do things that we don't do every single day like that, I think those experiences have a way of shaping us for our future that we don't even really understand. And those boys, I still know them all, and they still talk about that as being one of the most transformative moments. And it wasn't like a sermon I preached to them. It wasn't like a worship service. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
it wasn't something that I was taking them through. It was their experience in the natural spaces of God's creation, being stretched in their body in some way to where they all of a sudden felt a connection that they can't explain.
Yeah.
And I feel
Oh,
that when
man.
I do
There's
runs.
so much there.
Oh,
There's
man.
so much there. I think what filters through when you're telling those stories, I mean, there's so many different directions I kind of want to go here, but
Go for it.
well, it's just this idea of like the experiential side of life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of really neat one thing that is near and dear to my heart right now. I'm 45 years old. I'm kind of entering this middle passage of life.
Mm,
So it's really interesting to talk about what comes up for that. But I do believe that a lot of boys and girls, or men and women,
mm-hmm.
if they've had more of these experiential, formative experiences earlier on, then when they go through these other transitional moments of life, they're going to be better equipped. And there's like, I just recently was listening to a podcast. There's I think, professor from NYU. His name is Scott Galloway. He talks a lot about, the younger generation, technology, all of these things. So doing things like you're talking about and getting kids out in the wild, hiking and rafting and breathing fresh air and getting dirty and getting some sunlight on their face, all these things are formative, but I also believe they invite us into God's presence that it's pretty hard to
Hmm.
experience in a classroom or, on a screen or something like that. So I don't know, just kind of dropping it makes me think a lot about with Fly Life. What I want to do is invite people into experiences.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what I've found in coaching is there's a lot of people that have, yeah, maybe bucket lists, dreams and ambitions of places they want to go and things they want to do. But probably the most powerful lesson I learned working for World Vision all of those years is the power of invitation. So
Man.
a lot of people will think about things and they'll never do them unless they're, like, invited into it. And so
Yeah.
I hope to create experiences and opportunities where you and we can invite people into this and say, "Hey, come partner with me, be a part of this community, do this hard thing." And they're more likely to say yes when they're invited into it than they are to motivate and do it on their own.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, doing hard things in community with other people is a powerful recipe for transformation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. In fact, one of the things I wrote down is, um, as I was kind of going over some ideas in these notes, and the notes that I put in here don't necessarily mean that that's the direction we're going, but it just fits. And it's a line that I was thinking about the other day, that it seems like running and doing hard things, pushing our physical limits in many ways in life, removes sometimes these distractions, I guess, in some ways, like that begins to help us expose what's really underneath. Like, with those boys, or even on my 50 miler that I did with, that you helped lead, the Black Hills Ultra. What happened on that trail, I can't explain. Yet what you scripted out on paper, uh, as a training plan, and where we were going to be going with this training plan, but it was doing that in community. It was the invite that I got from you. It was the invite from World Vision. And now all of a sudden it's like, I'm still friends with these people. I still see what they're doing. Like Danita Castor and
Yeah.
some of them, like I'm still watching what they are doing. That experience like changed us, like for the better, but it also created a community that will never be erased. And I think that's what's cool what you're doing, because I'm starting to see that you're doing that with like corporate companies and things like that. My mind's already spinning because I'm going, I put together things for pastors right now in our district, and so I'm actually superintendent of our churches here in Colorado and New Mexico. I got to put together a pastors conference where we come together in like Woodland Park or a place in the mountains, and we get away from everything in real life and try to focus on our spirit and our physical bodies and different things like that, in a place of rest, but a place of movement. And I'm already going, Josh is going to be our next like speaker leader for that. That's going to be a cool moment.
I mean, yeah, sign me up. I'd love to. I just to share a really cool story from my own life of so on Mount Kilimanjaro a few years ago, which is one of the events that I got to co-lead and lead. Just amazing to go to these places and do these things.
You
I
also did
met
Comrades. You also did Comrades, which
Sure,
is another cool event. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah. Go
longest
for it.
wait, no, the largest and oldest ultra marathon in the world is what
Amazing.
Comrades claim to fame. Yeah, it's fantastic. We can talk more about that. But yeah, on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro, I met two people that have become like dear friends of mine. One of them is Danielle Strickland, who's just this powerhouse woman of faith. And so she invited me last year. We just finished leading our second We called it Breath and Cold Retreat, and we hosted
Wow.
it on the Sunshine Coast outside of Vancouver up in British Columbia. But what you were mentioning about bringing pastors together in the wilderness, this was an invitation to bring people out to the wilderness to really like get into God's word through daily prayer movement. One of the leaders, his name's Aaron White, does this incredible morning, like you stand out and you move as you pray. We spent some quality time together just talking about the gospel and doing breath work together and jumping in the frigid cold waters of the ocean and sauna and just kind of
Wow.
being immersed in community and nature. And so this was our second annual. The organization's called Infinitum, and there's
Hmm.
also they host a thing called the Deep and Wide Academy, which is kind of like a master's class platform for people that are curious about Christian spirituality and ways to deepen their faith. And they've put up some really, really cool content there. But yeah, I don't know, just these types of things that you're talking about leading out with groups of pastors and people are, I think, where it's at. I mean, we need more of that.
Yeah. And I love Danielle Strickland.
She
She
is
is
the real
amazing. She
deal,
is
man. The real
amazing.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you just name dropped and I was like, oh, cool. Josh knows
Was
Danielle.
that's I guess that
That's
is a name drop. Sorry, Danielle.
man,
But she's the real
that is
deal. Just
so
like
good.
such a wonderfully made woman of faith who's just like leading out with such powerful messages for people and just like fun to see somebody like her doing such cool stuff. So
Yeah. Are you familiar at all with an author by the name of Kurt Thompson?
I'd like to say
You
yes.
familiar
I
with
don't
Kurt?
know. I don't
I
know.
gotta point you in that direction. I think he does a lot about he connects a lot of the brain science to physical body and
Yeah.
spirituality and in Christian faith. I mean specifically, but he led a pastors conference once on this that I went to that was really, really cool. And it was all on rest and sleeping and our circadian rhythm that God gives us and all this stuff and how our brains work and process trauma and suffering and hard things and all that stuff. But yet it's intended to help us face every single day life. And he wrote a book called The Anatomy of the Soul. And yeah.
I have the Anatomy of the Soul is on my, I don't know if it's on the short list, but it's definitely on the list. I have to read that book.
I have him as an invite to try to come on my show. I have not got any connection back, but I do have some other connections. I'm going to try to get him on our show. But
That's great.
yeah, it's all down the line of what you're kind of talking about. Well, let's see here. What else do we want to move into? Yeah, tell me real quick, just some of the places you've been and what you've done. Like, what are some big Kilimanjaro's one, Comrades, like, and then you just told one with Danielle Strickland and your partnership with her, and what else? Any other things that you look back on your life and go, man, that was like one of the coolest things I've ever done that I was a part
Yeah.
of.
I mean, I don't know that everybody's wired the same way, but uniquely and wonderfully made, right? From a
Uh-huh.
physiological perspective, like thinking about God sewing us together like cell by cell, piece by piece. But
Psalm
like
139.
innately and yeah, instinctually, I think that we do have a desire for movement, for wilderness, and I've gotten to do some really neat things. I don't like talking about, things that I've done, which is kind of a silly, but in terms of my
I know.
resume of like endurance experiences, I mean, Comrades Ultramarathon in South Africa, it is just like it's a very, very special race. I sort of feel like anybody that runs or it's kind of like it's it has to happen once in a lifetime because it's this
I
international
know.
race of people from all over the world. I mean, it's
Hmm.
it's 90 kilometers, so it's about 56 or 57 miles through a region of South Africa called the Valley of a Thousand Hills. And it is just this epic journey it changes directions. So one year is a down year from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. Durban sits on the southeast east coast of South Africa. And then the opposite years in between, it's an
Hmm.
up year from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. So that's a race that is definitely high on kind of my lifetime achievements. New York City Marathon, having lived and resided in New York City Marathon, I've gotten a chance to run that multiple times, which is another incredible race. And back to comrades for a minute, they have a thing called the spirit of comrades. And it
Hmm.
it truly is this palpable thing that you can feel this human experience. Like you're doing it with all these people from all over. And there's like the spirit of comrades is this palpable thing. It's, it's spiritual. It's really, really
Hmm.
wonderful. I think one of the events that I'm most proud of that I got to do 2 consecutive years was I called it Endure with Purpose, 50 epic miles,
Hmm.
where I ran 50 miles on a treadmill at my old place of work at Chelsea Piers Fitness. And that was a fundraising event. What's unique about running on a treadmill for like 8.5 hours is you're
My
sort of
goodness.
in a fishbowl. And that's the point. It's like a little bit of a you want people to just see you like doing this monotonous thing over and over. It's pretty boring, but luckily we had, community and clients and friends and family that were there. I had a DJ playing music and I just ran
My goodness.
while we invited people to sponsor kids around the world. So it's just like some of these wild events, trail races and running on treadmills and hiking mountains. In most all of those things, doing it with other men and women, in pursuit of transformational experiences. So those are a few comrades, New York City Marathon, my 50 epic miles on a treadmill, certainly Kilimanjaro. One other that I'll just throw in the mix that was just I really felt God kind of stir my spirit. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know it was a life goal of mine. But last year, after I left World Vision, last summer, about this time really, I decided to hike the Colorado Trail. I was born and raised
Wow.
in
Cool.
Colorado, and
Yeah.
I had a little bit of time on my hands to figure out, okay, I'm not at World Vision anymore. What am I going to do? And it's really
Hmm.
where I had some quiet time out on the trail in the woods alone, no books or music or anything, just me and God, and just walking miles a day from the Colorado Trail starts in Denver, right outside of Littleton. And I think it goes, I want to say it's 480 miles from Denver to Durango, Colorado, and Southwest Colorado. And so I
So it
made
goes
it.
like through Morrison.
Yeah, it kind of goes up actually through Conifer, like where I grew
Oh,
up.
okay.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it gets
Yeah.
up over to, through the collegiate peaks and up and around, and you hit Lake City. That's where I ended up dropping off the trail, was in Lake City, Colorado. So I've got to finish it at some point, maybe this summer, but that's probably the most amazing event I've ever done because it was just kind of me alone with God out in the wilderness for a total, I think I was out there for 18 days. And
Goodness.
yeah, I mean, it's like
Yeah. That
a
is,
pilgrimage of sorts. But I'd
well,
say it
that,
was on that
that,
on that walk that I felt God really stir my spirit about going all in on creating fly life in this next version of my professional pursuit. So anyway, that's
man, well, that leads into like the other section of what I wanted to talk about is the idea of discipline versus motivation and like what motivated you to spend, I don't know, I think people, for me, I don't even like running by myself in the dark in the woods. There's some fear levels there that
mhm,
I struggled to try to want to face. I don't know. And so there has to be a deeper motivation for me to do that, to run through the night. And I haven't done that yet. I'd just rather start at 5:30 and do a 50 miler and be done before dark. But for 18 days by yourself, and I've heard people doing this and watch documentaries and all that stuff, but to have somebody on my screen right now that has decided to just put some stuff in a backpack and put some shoes on and go, like what was the motivation behind it for you?
yeah. Just
Yeah.
to be clear, it wasn't 18 consecutive days. I actually had to drop off the trail for a really cool family event. Story for another time because it could be an interview podcast in
Long
and of
one.
itself. But yeah, but I was out there, I think it was for 13 days, and then I got back on for another 4 or 5, something like that. What motivated it? I think if I'm being really honest, it's 2 things in the moment of, like, feeling inspired to do it. The first was I had chosen to kinda take a path that felt like I don't see it in front of me. I didn't have a map for what I was gonna really do after my previous job ended.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I thought, gosh, if I could do this really, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but if I could do this like really hard thing, like if
Right.
I can accomplish this really challenging thing, then maybe I could do anything. Like maybe it would give me the courage, the confidence, the
Hmm.
affirmation that I'm capable of doing hard things and whatever was in front of me wouldn't be so daunting. So that was
Yeah.
the first piece. The second piece is connected to that is also like, who am I? Like, what is my identity? And in all the roles that I've played or worked in my life, how can we not start to identify with that? Like, identify as coach or
Hmm.
identify
Right.
as this person or that person. And coming off of my last role with Team World Vision, when I walked away from my identity in that, it was startling. I'm kind of like, well, who am I without that? And so
Mm.
getting out in the wilderness, doing something hard, building confidence, refining some skills, like learning to survive in some ways,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like this really wonderful quiet time where God just worked on my spirit and helped me like remember that I am not what I do and I'm capable of doing hard things and amazing things. And it's time to like shift in my creativity and reform what's next. And I don't know. I'd say the most yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
What kind of fears were there? Did you have some fears in that? Did your mom call you and say, "Josh, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to have a phone? Are you gonna, like I don't
Yeah,
know."
well, definitely. Yeah, definitely. There are people in my life saying, please, please be safe. There's this incredible device that I kept on my shoulder. I'm pointing here because I like clipped it onto my pack. It's called a Garmin InReach. And so I
Yeah.
was able to connect home, to text those closest to me in my life each evening. I say, hey, I made it to camp. I'm safe. I'm good. So I did stay connected to the select few people that I really wanted to in the outside world. But yeah, there's very real fear. I mean, when the sun starts to go down, you start to wonder, like, okay,
Man.
there are other people out on the trail in places, but the sun starts to go down, the temperatures drop. You're in like high altitude Colorado backcountry, and there's animals out there. Like
Yeah, there
I
is.
think just because I want to pretend there's not mountain lions doesn't mean that they're not there. You can't just close your eyes and pretend they're not there. So, but that's part of what I think God wanted to evoke in my spirit of like bringing me back to earth, back to reality and in some ways feeling small, like out there in these valleys and peaks and just the vastness and the beauty. I mean, the amount of pictures I took of like sunrises and sunsets just cuz like your brain can't comprehend just the magnitude of it. So there's very real fear after dark but you get into your tent and one night there was like some pretty serious rustling right outside my tent, which
My
is
goodness.
scary. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I just like kind of zipped up just to peek out, and there was a deer like just eating grass right by my tent. And of all the creatures, that was that made me a little less afraid. It wasn't the mountain lion that I'd been,
I
panicking
always
about.
I always say, like, if you see a deer, there's probably
Yeah.
a mountain lion close.
Well, but the other part of that, Donnie, is that if there's a deer, then they have, food access. Where if there's no deer, then
I know.
you're the only prey. So I guess You could
Oh
look
my.
at it one of two ways.
Yep. Yeah. You know, I love that we were talking before we started. I was kind of giving you my idea about vocation versus avocation, and that you're exactly right. As a pastor, I think, and doing this for so long, it's hard for me not to identify as just as a pastor, like, because first thing people ask you is, "Hey,
Yeah.
where do you come from? What do you do?" It's
Mhm.
usually, where do you come from? What do you do? Well, I'm from here. This is what I do. And somehow being from someplace identifies us, and being, a pastor or a, fitness guy, that this is what we identify with. And when I was in my master's program, I had a professor that led us through this whole idea of vocation and avocation. And he made us write a mission statement about our life that identified really who we are and what we would do. And starting with who we are, and I identified with, um, oh goodness, now I'm forgetting his name. The runner from England that wouldn't run on Sunday, Chariots of Fire.
Okay.
He talked about, like, he has a statement in that where he says, God made me for China as a missionary, but God also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. And it doesn't mean that what we do, we don't find identity in. But whatever our identity is, like mine is in Christ, and I know yours is in Christ too, like we identify with the joy of Christ, but also the sufferings of Christ, and walking in both of those tensions at the same time, sometimes on a trail, or like you just talked about last year in the woods. Something happens to us in that moment, right? Something speaks to us in those places, because people always ask me, they're like, you don't go running with anything in your ears? And I was like, first of all, I can't hear a mountain lion if I'm listening to music,
That's right.
but I also can't hear God very clearly if I'm filling my brain up with space, with things that occupy the space of God's voice. And it's so cool to hear you say that, you're out there. It's really no phones, no music, no books. It's just your feet on the trail, your heartbeat, the spaces around you. Did you run into bad weather too when you're
Yeah, a
out?
bit. Interestingly enough, like the first couple of days were like, Colorado summer thunderstorms,
Mm,
where
yep. And they're scary.
had to take some serious cover while it passed, because hail and lightning and all the things that you do not want to encounter, but is most likely inevitable during the summer on some of those trails. Yeah, there it's kind of ran into anything and everything in terms of weather: hot days, cold days, rain and shine, and all of it. And I guess that's part of the fun. In the moment it's pretty scary, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
fortunately enough, I've spent quite a bit of time out in the wilderness, and I've done the right things leading groups where I've gone through wilderness first aid and wilderness first responder. And so I feel a little bit better equipped knowing that I have some of that education. But yeah, you get out there and the wilderness is bigger than us, and it reminds you of that pretty quickly.
Yeah. So true. So
But
true.
one thing I wanted to mention that you just reminded me of, and I don't know if you feel this way, as a coach, having trained a lot of different people, one thing that I think filters through with everybody that I've ever trained or coached is that movement helps them think more clearly, get reconnected back to themselves. Just
Mm,
the process of moving and circulation and brain chemistry. And for me, without a doubt, the times that I've felt most clear, most creative, most connected,
yeah.
I guess there's a theme, most connected to myself, but also to God, where like not an audible voice, but the inspiration of like how he created me uniquely, those things mostly come to the surface when I'm out doing like a long trail run or hike, or even sometimes in the gym doing a big workout.
Hmm.
There's something about this like metabolizing of the body, but also the spirit, where I just start to think more clearly, and that's where my best ideas and my inspirations have come from. And so day after day on the Colorado Trail, once I'd get moving, you start to get a little achy in the mornings because it's cold still. But once you get moving and the blood gets pumping and the respiration, you tune into your breath, all of a sudden, just the ideas and the connection, it's something that I really wish for everybody to experience, and I think everybody can, but you have
Hmm.
to be willing to get out there and move in order to have access to that. So,
Mm.
there's something there for me that's really, really special when I experience those moments of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I appreciate most about even in your training plan is the that I got from you is the importance of breath work and how explain that. Like why does that matter so much? What do you feel like is the benefit really behind it? Because I know what I felt, but I'd like to know maybe some thoughts that you might have about breath work and why it's so powerful.
Well, I've been studying breath work at some level for about 10 years now. I can't believe think it's been that long. And I've had some really incredible professional mentors and coaches that kind of helped impart some of this wisdom. I've taken some different certifications. Most recently, I haven't finished yet, but I've been taking it's kind of a year-long program. It's called Breath Science Certification. I mean, we dive into the biochemistry, the biomechanics, the psychophysiology of breath. Well, in tandem
Hmm.
with all of my education and certifications over the years, this thing that I've grappled with for many years is like the convergence of faith and fitness that I talked about earlier. And so as I'm
Right.
learning these different things, I'm always curious to like try to peel back some layers in spirituality and say, oh, like, where does this connect to maybe the way we were designed or the way we were created or God's intention? And that gets kind of fun. I'm sure that gets really fun for you, like just knowing who you are as a human as well as a pastor. But I've said I created a course that I'm in the process of trying to actually record in modules, but I'm calling it Breath is Life, and it's truly
Wow.
kind of it's a journey of understanding some of the spiritual implications, but also just, yeah, these things that I talked about, the biochemistry, biomechanics, the physiology. But if we go to like a scripture, the easiest one to pinpoint is like in the beginning, right? In Genesis 2. And I'm probably paraphrasing. I don't know which version, but you can correct me here. But it says in Genesis 2, from the dust of the ground, God breathed in through his nostrils the breath of life,
Yeah, I love it.
and
Yeah.
man became a living being. And so I think there's something here, these indicators, the specificity that it says in the Bible through his nostrils. You start to ask these questions. So, from my courses and my mentors and my teachers, you learn the power of the nose. The nose is designed very specifically to be our primary breathing mechanism, where the mouth is meant for communication and certainly eating, as well as an emergency breather. But the nose is designed with hair follicles and the paranasal sinuses, and it filters the air, it cleans the air, it creates nitric oxide, which is antifungal, antiviral. It's an antiseptic. So breathing through the nose, our body's able to receive the benefit a lot better than breathing through the mouth. So you start to kind of peel back some of the layers. God says in the Bible, like through his nostrils. And and so then you have some
Right.
scientific evidence that backs up, oh yeah, that's by design. And that's where I start to kind of geek out, and really from there it's kind of a takeoff point for me. Oh, what more can I learn? And just kind of understanding the mechanics of breath and just breathing properly and what that does for all the systems in the body. How
Yeah.
it can benefit our health and wellness and cognition and emotional well-being. The implications of breathing correctly, breathing well, it transcends spirituality. It's all about health and wellness and vitality, and it's something it's pretty remarkable. As you know, I'm passionate about it. I'm fascinated by it and like to share. with people about it through training and conversations like this.
I know for me, as I shared with you a little bit beforehand, it's like nostril breathing gives us that immediate metric. Like people don't realize this, but even for me, my watch tells me all kinds of stuff, but my watch
Sure.
can't feel what I feel. You know what I mean? And so there's times, even just yesterday, I was out running and I'm like going, okay, I'm feel it. And then to dial that back to a place that was sustainable, the best way to do that for me is the nostril breathing, the breathing through my nose, exhaling through my mouth, but that nostril breathing only really actually gets me to a level in my own pace where now I can sustain myself over time.
Mm.
If that does that make any sense? Like
Oh,
if I do nostril breathing,
100%.
yeah, if I do that only, I can run for a long time, a long time. But if I'm breathing through my mouth and my nose and I'm gasping, I'm going to I'm going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
And that helped me in that first 50, that not to really pay attention to, okay, flats, hills, downhills, whatever it is, nostril breathing. And that changes your heart rate. It puts it in a place where your heart rate's at a level where you can you can sustain the miles over time. And I just think that translates into spiritual life. I think in so many powerful ways, like that. I love what you just said about Genesis, because the spirit, that word is ruach. And that word means the breath of God. It literally means, like, this is a way that we practice in physical what God is trying to do spiritually, that we discipline our life in such a way that we're breathing in the very presence of God. And when we do that, we will sustain our spiritual life through things that we would have never done without it. That might be getting into the weeds spiritually a little bit, but at the same time, just I see the parallel is so powerful. And when I don't know if you have ever heard of the fact that the way we breathe is actually the sound of it's the sound of his Yod He Vah He, that when we breathe, we're breathing the Hebrew word of God. And I don't know if that's true. Maybe someday we'll all get to heaven and be like, man, we weren't even close.
That's right.
But somehow it gets us to a place where I think we can connect in a physical way, in a way that helps us prepare for everyday life. Like I told you about my dad
How's he
going
doing,
through
by the
hard
way?
things. He's doing really great. And it's crazy because they went in there. I think I mentioned this as we hit record, but my dad just went through open heart surgery and it was a last minute thing. And he went to the doc and got a bad report. And they said, man, you got what they call regurgitation of the heart, where your aorta is leaking and it's going back into the heart. So if you know anything about plumbing, anytime you get backflow, it's not a good thing. It will destroy stuff. And he was having backflow into his heart with his aorta, and they had to put a whole new aorta in. But while they were in there, they found a hole in his heart. They found all these other things that they were dealing with. And so he's doing great. And since he had that new aorta, he just told me yesterday, he said, I can breathe. Like I can breathe. I've never been able to breathe like this. It's like 78 years of your life. And it's like this one thing changes the way that now he can breathe. And I thought about that last night. I was like, man, like the goal in life is to breathe spiritually and physically. That if the minute you stop breathing physically, you die, and the minute you stop breathing spiritually, that's the real death behind things, and I just love how the breathwork piece was such an emphasis in your training plan. And I can't imagine what that looks like with your clients on an everyday basis, just helping them understand the power of breath and what it does for you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, all of so much of what you say resonates. I mean, I love it. I love that you shared that part about what my understanding of Yahweh, right? This sound of God, or the name of God. I believe another pastor buddy of mine, his name's Josh as well, told me it's called a tetragrammaton. It's not a
Yeah.
word, but
Yeah.
it's letters that actually are meant to make a sound, and that sound is God's name. So I love that
It's
you know that.
crazy. And the fact that the Hebrew culture back in those days, they didn't say the name of God because it was too holy, you know? So to say Yahweh was too holy to speak it out loud. Like it was a presence. It was an understanding that God is with you. And yet the very first breath that comes out of our that we take as a child when we're first born is God's name. And the last breath that we take is God's name.
Yeah.
It's just to whether that's really true or just somebody's great idea or theological idea. I think anything that's puts us in the mindset to understand God, that he's in everything that we do. He's in our breath. He's in our physical life. He's in our mind. He's in our heart. He's in our vocation, our avocation. He's in our calling. He's in all these things, you know. For lack of a better idea, Justin Bieber's new song called
Yeah.
Everything Hallelujah is this idea that is like brushing my teeth, hallelujah.
Yeah.
My dog, hallelujah. Everything's the presence of God. So yeah, amazing. Do you got anything specific that you like is burning in your heart and your mind right now as you're thinking, and maybe have stirred some stuff up that you'd like to chat about?
I mean, I think like each fork in the road here in the conversation, you've sort of inspired some different thoughts. I mean, I have a bunch of them. You know, some of them have gone by the wayside. Now, I was going to just mention one more kind of biblical nod towards breath. There's several of them, but this one, a good buddy of mine who I mentioned earlier, his name's Aaron White. He's a pastor. He was talking to me about Abram and Sarai. Am I saying her name right? Sarai?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, interestingly enough, both of their names, Abram became Abraham and Sarai became
Mm-hmm.
Sarah. This the
Mm-hmm.
sound of breath. And
Yeah.
there's some theology or some, you know, potential that God is breathing his life into them and giving them a new name. And the insert into their names is actually the sound of breath, the sound of the circle of life, God's life. You know, so it's like their names are changed with the breath of God. I just thought that was like such an interesting and neat nod towards kind of like peeling back some of those layers and getting into some of those scriptural references of breath, or like, you know, the name of God. That was just one or other that I thought I'd mention that was really fun to learn from him.
Yeah, and
But yeah, I don't know where.
names are really names are powerful. It's what we find our identity in. Like what you name your child is really, really important, you know? So yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
No, that was all. I just wanted to make a mention of that because I found that to be really thought provoking. But I think that from a breath standpoint, breath work or breath practice, just giving people some skills and tools on how, you know, like you were talking about how it's helped you regulate yourself during long runs. You know, there's some
Yeah.
really, really cool things that are happening in your physiology. Of course, there is a time and place for breathing through your mouth. And if you're running up a
Mm-hmm.
hill or you have to sprint, or, you know, you're doing something hard like a hit workout, or, you know, running from a wild animal, you're going to have to shift into that mouth breathing to move more air to keep up with what is called your metabolic demand. But in
Mm-hmm.
everyday life, if people could start to tune back into nasal breathing, posture, these things, you know, we sit at our desks and kind of get pushed down by gravity. It can sort of
Mm-hmm.
smash our diaphragm and our breath mechanics just by way of having good posture and breathing through the nose. You can start to breathe into the fullness. Proper mechanics of breath, they help
Mm-hmm.
with digestion. You have this
Wow.
diaphragm, and your pelvic floor acts as like a piston. It kind of goes in synchronicity when we breathe.
Hmm.
And so it helps with digestion, it helps with metabolism, it helps with detoxification, which is part of digestion. It helps with circulation, all of these things for our organs and tissues. So just simply learning to sit better, have better posture, and breathe through your nose can have a cascade of health benefits. And that's before
Hmm.
you even toe the line at like the local 5K. This is just about how God designed us and how we can optimize our health and wellness just through breathing well. So that's
Hmm.
something that's been important to me to share. It's like a low barrier for entry is just awareness of it, awareness of our bodies and our breath.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually amazing because I know for me, maybe this is just for me, I don't know, but I just feel like in training, I think it's too easy to just focus on the physical side of things that we don't realize that something as simple as the thing that we do without even thinking is one of the most important things. Like I did not get up this morning and hit my alarm and go, good.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that again. I don't think about breathing. I don't just go, Josh, hold on. I got to breathe real
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
It's something that is so natural. I was even telling my dad the other day, it's crazy you were on a heart lung bypass machine that was plugged into a wall.
Right. It's so
And when
wild.
they took that off and they shocked your heart and got it back going again. Like there's nothing connected to that. And that your heart beats, your blood flows, and you take breaths without even thinking. And yet, maybe that's the very thing that we neglect the most in physical training. There is like nutrition stuff out there every day. Like I can go on Instagram and flow through it, and somebody's saying something different about protein intake,
Yeah.
high
Sure.
carb, low carb, like whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like there's so much information about all these other things. And yet, very few people are talking about how we breathe. And what you just said is so cool that breathing changes the way our body processes food, the way that we are probably even retaining water or drinking water or salt or all the different things that go into any sort of
Yeah.
training. Breathing affects that greatly. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. See, now you're getting me queued back up here because
Go
just
for it.
just to respond to a few of those. So the reference you made about when you're breathing through your nose and you can settle into like a steady heart rate, these types of you become more efficient. So if you think about
Hmm.
what you just said, if you're you're like
Hmm.
that takes a lot of work. Breathing through your mouth, that's going to dehydrate you faster. The energy systems, so the energy, your blood is pumping oxygen through the body, and those oxygen molecules need to be absorbed into the tissues and organs for use. But if I'm breathing really hard, I'm going to burn through that energy a lot faster. So if I'm steady and efficient, I'm going to be able to last longer. Now, when it comes to like what you mentioned about food and water, a good friend of mine taught in a class, and I've since passed this along in all the workshops and classes, these corporate wellness days. We always talk about like the physiological like hierarchy of needs. Most people think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but your physiological hierarchy of needs. And so a way to invite you into
Hmm.
the question would be to say like, what are the most important things for you and I to sustain life? Outside of like
Right.
the blessing of
Right.
God, like our days are numbered, but what are the things? And you just mentioned a few of them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What would you say?
What is the foundation of that?
Well, do you need to do each day to sustain life?
Yeah. It's
Eat,
air, water,
yeah,
food.
yeah. And
Yeah.
sleep, I always throw sleep in there, but so in
Yep.
the hierarchy of needs, most people could live probably up to about 30 days without food.
Hmm.
Yet we
Hmm.
have it like, we have multiple meals a day. You can't miss a meal. I know that fasting is becoming more pronounced, which is awesome. There's some real benefits to that spiritually and physiologically. But, then water, you can live up to 3 days without water. But
Hmm.
how long can you live without breath? Most
3 minutes.
people, not more than like 3 minutes. So just kind of highlighting the point you made that like, oh, in endurance training, let alone in everyday life, we're so worried about nutrition and hydration, but could we also start to put more emphasis on breathing well,
Mm.
breathing efficiently, because it's going to help us with the nutrition piece. It's going to help us with the hydration piece. It's going to help us with everything. So that's just kind of a fun
It's
exercise to take people
what
through.
what's crazy about that, Josh, is for the last 7 years prior to me taking this superintendent role and pastoring where I'm at, this church I'm at, for the last 7 years I was a hospice chaplain, and
That's right.
so I would tell people when their loved one is on their in their last days, they would say, "How are we going to know that we're getting close?" And I said, "Well, interesting that you ask. God gives us these signs, and these signs are really powerful signs of life and death." And I said, "There's three things that we can't survive without, and that's breath, it's air, that is water, and food. We need nutrition, all three of those things." And I tell them the same thing. I said, "It's interesting that in the very beginning, before we ever existed as human beings, it was the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They were existing in the beginning before anything existed." And it says, "Let us make make man in our image," plural, meaning that when God created man, he was saying, let's make man in our image, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It was a community before there was ever us solo, and that community is in three. And wild that number three shows up from the beginning to our last breath, that you can't live 30 days without food, much more. You start eating itself basically at that point, right? And you can't survive. But yeah, three days without water. And I always tell people at the end of their life, if they're not drinking any significant water, and that doesn't mean like, sips, that means significant, like 8 ounces of water, 10 ounces, 16 ounces of water. If they're not doing that, the body is not able to sustain itself. And in that moment, God's giving us a sign saying, I'm bringing them home. I'm going to be their full sustenance. I'm going to be the one that actually sustains them into eternity. And these threes are our signs. And it's crazy how you just said that, because I've always believed that even in nutrition and running and endurance training, those three things, if you focus on those three things, your breath work is so powerful, but nobody's talking about it hardly at all. In fact, the girl that won the Cocodona 250, she beat all the men and set the record for it.
So
Rachel
amazing.
Antrican.
So amazing.
And
she's from Colorado.
I know she is. She's a machine. She's just incredible. Somebody said, there was a point where I saw your heart rate climbing one of the big climbs. And they said, you're climbing this big climb and your heart rate is 126. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder what her breathing was like, though. Her heart rate was 126. I know when my heart rate's at 126, I'm not breathing out my mouth. I'm enjoying it. And to think that she was that fit that she could just go up a mountain and still just breathe through her nose. That's what won the race for her. Her ability to breathe well in adverse situations. She ate well. She had a good nutrition plan. And I don't think that just that alone, looking at her performance, saying, I could go do that if I do all those things right. There's some genetic things with her that obviously are there. Because what's interesting about her story I heard her story sharing it on another podcast. She was not the athlete growing up. She did not come from a family of athletes. In fact, I think she grew up in Alabama, and not that anything against Alabama. They got great football, obviously. There's some athletes down there. There's no doubt. But she said that was the key. She goes, I didn't fit into the framework of the Alabama athletics. She said she was always kind of the pudgy girl, the one who was a little on the edge of being overweight or whatever. And then she struggled with eating disorders and things like that. Finding underneath all of that was there was an athlete there. There's an athlete under all of that, and now she's going to be considered one of the greatest female athletes ever. I think, in my mind, I think it's one of the greatest female achievements we've seen in my lifetime. I've never seen anybody do what she's doing. And obviously has to do with discipline, motivation, all those things that we talk about. But there's got to be something behind all that is really working for her, that's causing her to do what she's doing. You know, as Josh and I were wrapping up this conversation, we started talking about something that honestly became one of the deepest things of the entire episode. And that is something that we do every day that kind of we take maybe for granted. We don't really think about. We just breathe. And breath, not just physically, but spiritually. That's what I have found in this theme, in this conversation. I'm going to close this episode out because there was a little bit of a glitch. You didn't miss a whole lot, just missed the very end of the conversation. But maybe breath just sounds way too simple when it comes to movement or running, ultra running, until you really start to think about it. And I love what Josh said in this episode, that the very first thing that we do when we enter this world is to breathe. And according to what he referred to in Genesis, the breath in our lungs is connected to the breath of God himself. And that means that breath is not just survival. It's connection. It's presence. It's awareness. It's dependence. And maybe that's why so many of us, I know including myself, feel so exhausted at times, especially right now. Not because life is so hard, but because somewhere along the way, we stop paying attention to what is actually really sustaining us every single day. We rush, we strive, we numb ourselves, we distract ourselves, and sometimes we forget to actually do what is most common and do it really well, and that is just breathe. Not just physically, but spiritually. So now that I'm following through with this episode and I was come back to try to edit it, I forget exactly what Josh led us through in our Selah moment, but I'm going to take us through one today as a closeout to this episode. And it's in Psalm 46 where the scriptures tell us to be still, and that in the stillness, we can know God. I think sometimes we feel like knowing God is learning more about him, reading more, studying more, going to church more, being in community with people that know who God is and have a deep relationship with him. So the reality is that just for a moment, what I want to do is wherever you are right now, I just ask that you would take a moment just to slow down. Take a deep breath in. Listen to your heartbeat. Maybe just slowly breathe in and exhale. Once again, a deep, deep breath in and exhale. Keep doing that as I speak into your mind, and be still and know that he is God. Breathing in, be still. Exhale, know that he is God. Keep doing that. You are not behind. You are not abandoned. You are not carrying your life alone. In the stillness, may it be apparent that God is with you. And maybe this invitation to you today is not to try hard, but to become more aware of his presence in the middle of your actual life, because the life you're living is forming you into the person you are becoming. I hope that was helpful for you. I know it was for me this morning at the tail end of an incredibly busy week of church ministry and board meetings galore. I had all these meetings at this church, at the church that I pastor, and it was all our national level leaders, everybody from the mission field. We had people from all over the country. And in many ways, for me, it was like a historic moment that they would choose my space. They would choose our space where we are here in Arvada, Colorado. But it was a busy week. I mean, every hour upon hour was filled with meetings and people and movement and energy. And at the end of the week, I was completely exhausted, as I am right now as I'm speaking to you. People just left this building probably an hour ago. And I'm just now being able to sit in some silence for a little bit. Maybe that's you in life. Maybe that's where you're at. Maybe things just seem so busy and almost out of control, like we can't hold on to them enough to understand them. I just want you to know that there's an encouragement for you today to go for a run, go to the gym, go for a walk on the treadmill, sit on your back porch in the evening when the air is cool and the moon is out. Maybe sit on that same back porch with a cup of coffee early morning. Get up 30 minutes early, 40 minutes early. Feel the breeze on your face. Watch the sun come up or watch the sun set, and just enjoy quiet, because the scripture is really true. Be still, do nothing, just breathe, and you will know that he is God. Guys, if this episode has encouraged you, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review? Maybe let me know how this might have helped you in some way, shape, or form. I would love your feedback. If I don't get any feedback from you, I won't know what to continue to produce and put out there, but I will put stuff out there that is based off of what I'm feeling in the moment. And maybe that's exactly what you need too. There is community sometimes in the things we need. But if you know that this has been something important for you and you want to share it, please do so. Send it to somebody who might need it. And this week, I'm going to encourage you to just choose one simple rhythm. Like I just said, maybe a walk, maybe a prayer, maybe it's a slower morning or a slower evening. Don't forget to breathe. Make sure you breathe before you react. A moment of silence before reacting to your phone, not to perform, not to prove anything, but to practice this beauty of awareness that God is in your life no matter what. In the next episode, I'm going to be sitting down with an ultra runner by the name of Dylan Ledbetter, and for an incredible conversation that skip that part. Now, in this next episode that's coming, I sit down with an ultra runner by the name of Dylan Ledbetter. And it's an incredible conversation about life, about connection with God, endurance, healing, identity, and how running has become a part of a way of life that has transformed his life. It's honest, it's raw, it's hopeful, and incredibly powerful. I hope you're going to enjoy it. You're not going to want to miss it. I promise you that. So this is the Rhythms and Roots podcast, and I'm encouraging you today just to live rooted, run free, and keep becoming. You know, as Josh and I were wrapping up this conversation, we started talking about something that honestly became one of the deepest themes of this entire episode: breath. Keep breathing. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode with Dylan Ledbetter. Leave a like, leave a review, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. So glad to be doing this journey with you. Hope you're having a great week. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today on the Rhythms and Roots podcast. My prayer is that this conversation helps you stay rooted in Christ and inspired to live out the sacred rhythms that shape both body and soul. If this episode encouraged you, do me a favor, do yourself a favor and a friend a favor. Share it, get it out there, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss what's ahead, because I'm super excited about where this might be going. Until next time, keep abiding, keep moving, and keep living a life fully formed in the spirit and the mind and the body, and we'll see you again soon.